Hello everybody and welcome to the Little Lost Lotus studio show. Almost live from almost New York City. This is the very first episode of the studio show. It just moved in at the beginning of the month. It's kind of a small studio. It only goes to about here, and then it only goes to about here, and then down to here. So it's pretty small, but I think we'll double it before the year is over. So today's question is, how rare is the Lotus Elise in the United States? This is something I've talked about a little bit back in some of my earlier videos on how to shop for a Lotus Elise in the US, and I alluded to it a little bit, sort of how Lotus production numbers compare with production numbers for things like the Porsche 911 and the Chevrolet Corvette. But I wanted to go a little more in depth on this topic for a couple of reasons. One, if you are shopping for a Lotus Elise, you may find that it's pretty hard to find one. And two, if you've never looked for one before, but it's something you're thinking about doing, I just want to prepare you a little bit for what the numbers actually look like. So some of the folks over at the Lotus Talk forum have compiled all of the US production number information for the Lotus Elise and Exige models. So the Lotus Elise was first available in the United States in the 2005 model year. Leading up until 2005, there had been a lot of sort of built-up demand and anticipation for the Lotus Elise coming to the United States in federal form. The Lotus Elise S1 was never available in the United States, but it always had gotten great reviews, and people over here knew about it and wanted to be able to buy an Elise in the US, but it wasn't until the S2 version in 2005 that was possible. With all the built-up demand, it's not surprising that the 2005 model year was the largest in terms of overall production numbers for the US market. Production numbers for the 2005 model year were just over 3,000 units, and it accounts for half of all of the Elise and Exige models produced for the US market ever. This is why when you start shopping for Lotus Elise, you're sort of overwhelmed by 2005 models. 2005 models are great, but there are a few nice upgrades that happened in the 2006 and 2007 model years and later that are really nice to have if you can find them. So across all years of Lotus Elise production, 2005 through 2011, and all the variants, so the Elise and the Exige platform, there were about 6,325 units produced total. So just to put that into context, what does it really mean for there to only be, just over 6,000 units, available within the United States market, across all model years? What does it actually look like, and how does that translate into, sort of the number of cars that are available for sale at any given time when you may be shopping for one? A good way to get sort of a general feel, and it's not an exhaustive way of searching by any means at all, but looking at AutoTrader's listings for various cars and models gives you a pretty good sense of what the market as a whole looks like. There are 43 Lotus Elise vehicles for sale nationwide. So 43 total vehicles, that's it. So 43 cars listed on AutoTrader. And like with anything, there are cars at the very bottom of the price range, which are right at $30,000 or maybe a little bit less for one with either high miles or a 2005 or maybe something with a salvage title. And then once you start getting past around 2008 model year vehicles, you're looking at $40,000 plus all the way to $60,000, $70,000 for really recent Exige and Elise models, and some of the things that are harder to find here, which leaves sort of, I think, the sweet spot of what a lot of people are looking for, and that's sort of the $35,000 to $38,000 Elise that is maybe a 2006 or newer with 30,000 miles or so, maybe less. That is a very, very small slice of the pie. Referring back to the graphic from the Lotus Talk forum, you can sort of see why with how few cars were produced during those model years. So at any given time, there's just not very many in existence, and there aren't very many for sale. So back to context and sort of the result on AutoTrader today. 43 Lotus Elise models for sale. So let's compare that to the Porsche 911. So I ran a search on Porsche 911s. There are almost 5,000 Porsche 911s for sale on AutoTrader.com today nationwide. That number is only a little bit smaller than the total Lotus Elise production period. So one way to think about that is that there are more than 100 times as many Porsche 911s for sale at this moment in time compared to Lotus Elise. So for every Lotus Elise you can find, there are 100 Porsche 911s. Next on the list, the Corvette. 12,138 Corvettes for sale. 300 times the number of Lotus Elise for sale. For every single spec of Lotus Elise that you find on AutoTrader, there would be 300 options of Corvette. Now the Ford Mustang is near and dear to my heart, and I've owned several of them over the years. This is just to kind of show like what happens, you know, when you start comparing an Elise to something that's a lot more common that a lot of people have. Numbers are kind of staggering. I mean, that there are 650 Mustangs for every Lotus Elise for sale. If you could turn AutoTrader into a large dealer parking lot, that there would be 650 Mustangs and then one Elise at the end of the line. And that just kind of, that probably puts things in sort of the best perspective, since we're all so used to seeing Mustangs and kind of have a sense of how many there are out there. That should give you an idea of just how few Lotus Elises there are by comparison. However, I did find another sports car that is even harder to find than a Lotus Elise, and that would be the Ford Probe. So if you're looking for a Probe, I'm sorry for a lot of reasons. Actually, the last year 97 GTS was pretty cool. There were 6 Ford Probes on AutoTrader. Fun fact about that: you could actually buy all 6 Ford Probes at their asking price on AutoTrader for half or maybe a third of the going rate for sort of an average Lotus Elise. One last thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about the Lotus Elise production numbers. If you check out the Lotus website, there is a page where you can order a certificate of provenance for your particular Lotus vehicle. You give them the VIN number, model, year, and that kind of thing, and they'll send you back a certificate with the specifications for, you know, the original color, options, what dealer it was sold through, as much information as really they have about the car. If you get their higher priced option, you can get the build sequence of your car, and they'll tell you, you know, how rare is your particular spec. So if you have a particularly rare color with a rare interior option, it'll tell you, you know, there were 2 of these made in 2007, or maybe 1 of these made in 2008. So it's a really cool thing to do, and, you know, have to sort of know more about your particular car. I haven't done it yet, but I plan to do that later this year, and I will be sharing that with the channel once it comes in. So I hope this helps answer the question, you know, how rare is the Lotus Elise in the U.S., and give you a better sense of just how few cars we're really talking about, and how small the ownership pool is for these vehicles, and sort of how rare and how special they are, and how really awesome it is that we have them at all and that we get to drive them. And, you know, when people say they've never seen one, there's a very good chance indeed that they have never seen one, because, you know, they'd have to see 650 Mustangs before they would see a Lotus, and that, you know, that probably happens after some amount of time. But now that we have the studio here, we'll be able to do a lot more shows covering all kinds of Lotus topics, in addition to my normal content, which will be me, of course, in the Lotus Elise on a drive, like I've been doing, you know, over the last year. I love sharing my car with you, and that will continue, but by having this studio, it now makes it possible to cover a lot more topics and make more videos when the driving weather is not great, or I'm just not able to make a video in the car itself. Let me know what you think of this first studio production, and any questions that you have that you'd like to have answered on Little Lost Lotus, almost live, almost from New York City. Thank you all so much for watching. We're at almost 500 subscribers, and I hope you'll subscribe if you like this content and want to know more about Lotus vehicles. Any questions you have, send them my way. I respond to practically every comment that comes across. I love interacting with all of you. It's a small but really great group of people. This channel has been a really meaningful part of my life over the last year. I didn't expect quite this level of interest so early on, and I'm really grateful for the very positive community that we're building. And so I hope you'll subscribe if you like this content, and leave a like and a comment, because I really do like to hear from you in the area down below. And thank you for watching.